Be making basics.
All right, folks. So in this lecture, what we're going to be doing is covering how to EQ and sweeten up your tracks, okay? It's a very important lecture. It's really the bulk of what this is going to be about after you get your levels, because for the most part, man, if you're picking the right instruments and stuff like that, if you kind of know what you're doing when it comes to making the beat, you're really just there to sweeten up the mix a little bit. You're really not trying to do a whole lot to it. So let's go ahead and start with EQing. Now, the type of EQing techniques we're going to be using, mainly the main number one EQing technique we're going to be using is called subtractive EQing. Now, this is where we're going to be taking away frequencies instead of boosting them. Sometimes what we've found is that when you add more to the mix, it kind of creates problems. So instead, what you want to do is look for ways that you can take away from the mix to create room for other tracks. So this is a brief overview. All of these different tracks have different frequencies. Okay, so like the kick drum, that's going to have lower frequencies than, say, like a snare drum, which is going to have like higher and mid-range frequencies. Vice versa on the instruments, like this guitar is going to be like mid to high range. And then like even a flute, that's going to be kind of like, this flute is more of an earthy feel. So it's kind of a mid to low / high. It's kind of right there in the middle type vibe. And so each of these different instruments, they have different types of frequencies and sit different places on the frequency chart. And so what you want to do is, again, we're starting with like what we want to do is start with maybe our main instrument here, or our the star, and you want to just kind of just get a vibe for them. And what you want to do is start to create room in the mix with EQing, so that this instrument can stand out. Now, the first thing we're gonna do is just gonna take away some of the dead sounds, some of the lower sounds, lower frequencies, and even some high frequencies that just doesn't need to be in the mix. So what we'll do is go over here to this audio effects section of your the track. Again, you can do it either in the inspector, or you can come over here to the actual mixing window and come over here to this, say, audio effects, and you can add your effects there. So you go down here, audio units and waves, and I'm going to go ahead and grab an EQ. Again, I told you, like in the last lecture, I like to use like a 4-band EQ. I'm just going to pull that up. All right, so make sure you go ahead and put whatever instrument you're going to start EQing on a loop, so that way you can hear it back and forth. But the first thing I want to do is I want to click one of these EQ bands on, and what I want to do is I want to create a cut right here where I'm cutting the low frequencies. That's the first thing you're going to want to do, and we're going to actually want to do this on all of the tracks. So I'm going to listen to this first and then begin to cut it and take away the low frequencies just to where I start to hear the instrument tracks sound a little bit light. Okay, once it starts sounding a little light, you want to pull back a little bit, but you want to cut all the dead or lower frequencies out of this. So let's just check this out. All right, so as you can kind of hear, I was pulling this over here, and I pulled it a little bit to like about 1K, and it was actually taking too much of the low end out. You still want to hear the actual instrument, but you want to just cut some of that low end. The reason why I'm cutting the low end out is when you actually play the beat or the actual drums, you want that to really shine through, and then be able to hear the instruments over here on this side. So on the spectrum. So you want to basically your low end kicks and low end sounds to come through and cut through here, and basically by keep cutting this out, it eliminates what's called like basically a clash, okay, of frequencies. So we'll do that for this. You could also come over here and that's why I also do this 4-band EQ, but you can also come over here and take away some of the high sounds as well. So we'll take like a high shelf here. And a key tip in all this is you really want to use your ears on this, man. You know, you don't want to distort the instrument or change the sound of the instrument totally. It's really about sweetening it up, okay? Taking away like this kind of has a little bit of a high end that could be a little annoying. So like that's why I went in here and took away some of that high end. So listen. So when I took that out, it kind of made that guitar sound a little more warmer. And those are the things that you want to be considering when you're doing this, okay? So when it comes to EQing, I keep things simple. I don't do a whole lot of boosting and all that. I really am just cutting back some of the lower end frequencies and maybe some on the higher end. So let's go ahead and continue to move forward. We're gonna also cut some on this flute. So I always start off with the melody before I start with the move over to the drums. Let's work on this flute now. Okay, I'm gonna put this 4-band EQ right here as well. And we're just gonna start working on cutting out some of the dead frequencies or lower frequencies. You see, you kind of hear how that's a little bit too light. You want to keep on pulling that back some so you can get some of that body of that instrument. And again, you can do that, take out some of the highs if you wish. I mean, you don't necessarily have to do that on this particular one because it's already, there's not like a piercing high frequency sound. All right, cool. So we got those two going. Honestly, with those two, it's going to give us a good vibe on what we need to do for the rest of them. As you can see, this track right here, this detuned sample, it kind of has a big presence in the song. So we want to make sure we're also cutting some of the low end out of that. All right. Okay, cool. All right, so that's good right there. As you can see, I really didn't go in there and sweeten up that too much more than that. I like, my philosophy on this is really, I'm not trying to change the sound of the beat. I'm just trying to make it sound like work better, makes the instruments work better with the beat. You feel me? Within the beat. So anyway, now that we have the main melody sounds pretty much kind of sweetened up and EQ'd, now we want to start working with the drums. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring in some drums here. So this is a good, I think, loop area for me to work with. Actually, I'm gonna bring it right around here, so I can get the drums going with this too. that bad. This is another reason why I told you, you want to bounce down your tracks to audio files and export the audio files back into the session, because again, once you start adding these different effects on here, it can slow down your CPU. And you know, so anyway, like when it comes to the kick, I really don't process it too much when it comes to EQing. I still gonna cut some out of it, so I do it like this, but I'm really just kind of keeping it pretty much all the way over here and just leaving just a little bit of cut right there. So let's show you here. All right, so pretty much that's what I do to the kick. Okay, I don't really do too much on that. Now, if you can listen to this, you can kind of hear this kick drum kind of has a little bit of light airiness to it. If based on you as a producer, you could cut some of that out. To do that, I'll just go ahead and select this four right here, this fourth band, and we're gonna do a cut here. Let me just listen to it. And that's as if, like, say, if you want more of a gritty sound, like a gritty, earthy sound compared to a light, bright sound. Now, me personally, I kind of like the bright sound on that kick drum, so I'm gonna just leave it alone. Okay, and we're taking out some of that highs on the kick just so that it's giving some room for the other high sounding instruments. I don't want the kick to be overly high sounding. So now that we have the kick drum going, we have the main melody parts going, we're going to bring in the snares and everything else like that. So let's check it out. So we'll take this down somehow. As you can notice, is like when I first started, I started mixing like one instrument where I can just I'm just able to zoom into it and just listen to that one instrument. So that main special instrument, or the one with the special sauce, which is that guitar, I mixed that one alone first, mixed it to tune sample a little bit alone. But once you start bringing in all the other instruments, you kind of do want to listen to it as you're taking away the EQ. So depending on how bad it needs to be EQ'd, you might still solo it out, listen to it alone without all the other instruments. But for the most part, I try to listen to it along with everything, because that's the main part. It's going to have to jive well with everything else. So the snare, obviously, you want to go ahead and cut some out on the snare as well. Let me just kind of listen to this. Okay. And pretty much just want to keep on going down the list, man. I mean, I don't want to overly complicate this, but it's just really about taking some of that low end out, some of those frequencies that are there that you necessarily can't hear, but that affect the overall mix and the processing power and stuff like that when it comes to your computer. So that's why we're taking these out. You know what I mean? These are frequencies you can't necessarily see, but I want you to imagine if you were like, you have a group of people that are, you're trying to fit all through one doorway. If all the people go through the doorway at the same time, it's not going to happen. But if you group people together and maybe cut this person out and this person to come behind this person, you can now fit everybody through. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're trying to get all of these frequencies to fit through the same, to that stereo bus. So anyway, let's check this out. I'm gonna go ahead and pull some of them from the second snare. And that's the thing too. You really want to pay attention to the way that instrument sounds. So like, for instance, this instrument, it has like more of a earthy sound. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of muffled slightly. Listen to it. So these are some tips you want to keep in mind. Like you don't want to over process it to the point where now this sounds completely different. So this is an example of over processing it. Now it sounds completely different. So you want to make sure that you're not taking away the actual sound of the instrument. So you can kind of see it here. I still took out some of the low, but I can still feel some of the body of that. And I'm gonna go ahead and play it again with everything else. All right, next we're gonna go ahead and do the hi-hats. All right. Again, you can hear the difference between like taking off too much, taking off not enough. And then kind of getting a good vibe right here, where I can still feel some of the body of it, but then I don't have all of the dead space here. With a hi-hat, I do want to kind of take some of the highs out of that, just so it's not sounding too abrasive, too, in your ear. So I'm just going to do that. All right, cool. Again, we're keeping things simple here. Let's listen to it. You want to make sure when you're mixing this with the EQ, you're always listening to it along with the other instruments. So if you do solo it, go ahead and make sure you unsolo it again and listen to it again with the other instruments. Okay, my bad, y'all. Let's check out this cymbal, which I don't think it's going to be a whole lot that I need to do to that. But again, we want to pay attention to making sure you keep the quality of the sound intact. All right, that's good. I mean, it takes out some of the lows, still giving some room for the lower sounds to come through, but then it's still cleaning it up a little bit. So we're gonna leave that alone. I got this rise sound. Let's listen to that. Now, as you can see, that was starting to sound a little bit too light and airy. Again, I'm stressing this over and over again because you want to make sure that you're playing it with the music and without, just to kind of get a good vibe of how it really sounds with the actual instruments together. All right, so we got this downer sound too. And as you can kind of listen to it, it really does have a lot of highs in it, so all of the lows down here is just gonna be frequencies that are just in the mix, muddying up stuff. So that's why you want to cut that out too. Let's listen to it again. Let's see. Okay, so we're cutting out the frequencies, the lower frequencies, but we're not cutting them so much to where it's actually affecting the sound of it and changing what the sound sounds like. So let's check out this what. My bad. All right. So sorry about the computer going down like that, but we're moving forward. I'm pretty sure you're getting the basic principle of this. Let's keep on going. Okay. And it's very important not to cut too much out, because then it actually starts affecting the way the the track sounds, So we're gonna finish this up. We just got a few more instruments to go through, and then we're gonna go on to the next lecture here. All right, cool. So we got that sound mixed in there now. Get the second flute. Now I'm gonna give you a trick here, because actually I have 3 different flutes. They're pretty much the same flute, just played differently. So instead of me having to come over here and obviously you still want to double check to make sure it sounds right, but a trick here is you can go to your mixer, and I could take this flute sound right, or this EQ that I put on this flute, and just move it over to these other two flutes. And I'm gonna do that by holding down the option key and then clicking on it and dragging it, and then let go of the option key after you drag it over. And now when I click on this, it has the same settings as I had on the first flute. And so that's a cool little trick that you can use. So let's just kind of listen to this again from the jump. I'm just going to play this from the beginning. Always make sure you save along the way. Push this up here like that. All right, and see, what you want to also do is just, after you EQ everything, or just do the subtractive EQ and taking away the dead or the lower frequencies and everything, listen to it again, and then just make sure that there's not some instruments that you might need to adjust. Like, I was noticing that this detuned sample was sounding a little like it was a little airy, like it needed a little more low end. So what I did is I went here, I'm listening to it, I'm like, okay, let me just adjust it. As you saw, took away some, pulled it back some. So keep that in mind. So that concludes this lecture, man. I just wanted to give you an overview of some tips and tricks that I use when it comes to EQing. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks so much again for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Peace.